So what I'm reminded of during that meditation is my daughter Hallie saying to me, just keep swimming, Mom, keep swimming. Whenever I was in a rough patch, she would say that. So I turn it back to Roger. Thank you so much, my dear ones.
Yeah, thank you, Judith. That's beautiful. Yeah, we do have to just keep swimming, don't we? I was, when you mentioned that, I was thinking of a metaphor that some teachers like to use, and I like to use it too, of how when we practice the paramitas or the path of the bodhisattva, the bodhisattvas are said to be born of a vow, not through karma. In other words, they're sort of closer to perfected beings. And so they've sort of worked through a lot of the karma, and they have dedicated their lives so thoroughly and deeply to the vow to save beings from suffering, that's sort of what their experience in their life is expressed and is born out of that vow, rather than the karma to perpetuate their ideas of being a separate body-mind. That kind of discipline and diligence is how we work with it. Anyway, I was telling Judith that in another group in Florida, where actually the group's not in Florida, but a lot of the people there, we're studying the paramitas with one of my teachers, Reb Anderson, who wrote a book called Entering the Mind of Buddha. So if you're really interested in a hands-on guide to how to practice the paramitas in daily life, I think that would be a really good one. A lot of stuff to say, so I don't want to say too much, but maybe read some of the stuff that Reb said about the paramitas. Because he's dedicated his life to this, so his words are very powerful on this subject. He says, Bodhisattvas train in these 6 practices. He calls them the 6 heroic practices in the conventional world in which we find ourselves. These great practices help us to be kind and compassionate within the limits of our understanding of the world as it appears to us. They help us to offer our compassionate and kind action in the conventional world, and at the same time they train our minds so that we can open to wisdom, which is the realization of the ultimate and inconceivable nature of reality. When these practices are perfected by wisdom, leaping beyond wisdom, from the ideas of wisdom, or leaping beyond being confined by our ideas, so we're not attaching to our ideas about it, is what it means here. They free us from our limited understanding. They help us realize the place where we really are, the only place from which an appropriate response, in other words, an appropriate response is when bodhisattvas are acting in service of their vow, that's the appropriate response. So, and there's 6 of them, and then, each of them are all interrelated. But I thought since we're concentrating mainly on diligence, I wanted to say a little bit about the first one, which is generosity or giving, because we need to learn how to be generous with ourselves. In other words, generous with those mental formations that come up from the deep that she mentioned in the meditation, and so we learn to welcome all of those non-judgmentally, because they do, and for us, most of us, probably all of us, I guess, some of these mental formations, maybe the majority, sometimes, are seeds of suffering. Fears, anger, jealousy, as Judith mentioned. So we learn to welcome them, and in generosity, Reb says that as we get closer to perfecting generosity, we realize the oneness of the giver, the gift, and the receiver. In other words, being generous and giving away all of our experience, offering all of our experience back to the Buddha so we can receive the great compassion of Buddha. And one way to make this a little clearer, I thought, was that metaphor of the ocean. If you think of a current in the ocean, think of the current as mental formations swirling around in the deep of awareness. So say the ocean is our awareness, and the mental formations are like the current in the ocean, right? So they're swirling around and they can be very restless and disturbing or peaceful and joyful. But the thing is, they don't suddenly become the ocean water. They always are. Their very nature is ocean water. They're made of water just like the ocean is made of water. And they're impermanent, but the ocean isn't. The ocean is always there, is always permanent. So our awareness, our essential being doesn't come and go, just like the ocean doesn't come and go, but the currents swirl around and come and go. And they're the very nature of our being. So when we learn to, in terms of our sensations, when we learn to directly experience the very raw emotions without clinging or attaching to our ideas about what they are, then we're allowing them, and Buddha is helping us allow them to come closer so we can look deeply as they rise from the deep. We can look deeply and assimilate them, welcome them, and the transformation comes when we realize that they're not something outside, and they're actually calling for compassion. Our suffering is actually calling for our compassion.
Ty says specifically that we need to embrace all of our seeds with mindfulness.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, I had some real suffering earlier this week with feeling really bloated. I've had this lifelong thing. I like dairy, but now my body's pretty old, so it's like, stop, you eat too much dairy, you need more fiber and stuff. So I started feeling these painful stomach pains, and I was bloated, and so I thought, okay, well, now I have to give these talks. This is your opportunity. Like, again, the parameters are the opportunity to practice in our daily life. So I had to practice with myself first, and it's time to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, right? So it was kind of like, it felt new to me even though I've been talking the talk and hearing it felt, there was a new experience when I was really in deep pain. There was this experience of like, yeah, the pain itself is calling for compassion, and it's not something outside, it's you, it is you. So be compassionate with yourself, and everything else is also you, looking deeply. So the pain is actually calling for compassion, and when we open to it without thinking it's something bad, something we have to get rid of, there is that opening and realizing what's actually there that I have to be afraid of, what's actually there I have to get rid of. And so the transformation happens when, like, transformation from the deep, is that what Ty said? Something like that. When that happens,
transformation at the base.
At the base, okay, from the depths, at the base. When you realize you are the ocean, we are this awareness. So then there's that feeling, and that's the recognition of our shared being, that everything is us. And so that's where the great compassion comes from. It comes from Buddha, and it is great compassion. The basis of the whole Bodhisattva thing is the bestowing of great compassion, oceans of blessing beyond measure, they say. Eyes of compassion, observing beings bestow blessings beyond measure. So that, and then we need to also be patient. The third paramita is patience. And we need courage and diligence in order to maintain that awareness, that realization, and to deepen it and to strengthen it and to share it with others. Let's see. Let me see. He said some good stuff. I wanted to just read a little bit more. So in patience, he says, patience is the ability to sit calmly in the center of all suffering. Other words for patience include presence, endurance, forbearance, and tolerance. Patience is not waiting for painful circumstances to go away. It's not attempting to control our experience. Patience is not trying to get away from physical and emotional discomfort, and it is not wallowing in them. The practice of patience is supported by generosity and ethics, and in turn, it protects them. So we train in generosity in order to learn patience, and we train in generosity and patience in order to learn diligence or joyful effort. We will need great patience in order to enter the practice of heroic effort or diligence. So in diligence, I looked it up, and the definition I got, I kind of knew what it meant, but a more precise that is like steady, earnest, energetic effort. An earnestness, commitment, or seriousness of purpose without grasping or turning away from our experience is sort of in Zen terms, they say it's right effort is not adding something extra. In other words, don't adding all our opinions and judgments about things. It's acting from the heart of that vow, And when we look deeply and receiving that compassion that is the nature of our essential being, the heart of that vow comes through, and we want to express that heart and that vow in our daily actions, in our opinions of good and bad and all that. If we're too attached to them, they get in the way of our really clear, thorough, and deep expression of that love and compassion. Because everything, again, that we experience in the outside world is calling for that compassion. So, many practitioners will say that once we embark on this path of the bodhisattva path and the vow to end suffering, it becomes kind of like a fire inside. Maybe it starts as a little candle that's kind of fragile and flickers a lot, but as it grows into a big fire, when it's small and fragile, wind comes along, it'll blow it out. But Reb says that when it becomes deeper and grows, when we water the right seeds, and through diligence and perseverance, and we expand, that fire gets bigger and bigger. And then when even a storm comes, it makes the fire stronger instead of weaker. So we're all on that path. We're all on the way, and we've come a long way just to get where we are, to have this practice that helps us to look deeply, and deeply explore the nature of that by which our experience arises, is made possible, and is known. More and more people are learning this is what we need to do. This is the real meaning of life. That it is, everything we know is impermanent. Everything we can perceive and describe is impermanent. So this path is the best path, at least one expression of the path that we learn to help others and ourselves overcome our suffering. So I guess we've got time. We can have some discussion about it.
We have time.
Yeah.
During this recent family dysfunction, I felt there was an incident, and I felt my passion, my passion was gone after that, and it just came back when you spoke about the fire, because I do have that fire in me for the bodhicitta.
Mm-hmm.
I I so much want to follow the path in a way that is only useful to others, which means it's useful to me as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, Roger, for that, for the metaphor of fire. I feel it now, right now. I feel that passion.
Yeah, good. Anybody else want to comment on that? On what Judith said about family dysfunction, crisis, or whatever? Or anything else that's related.
Well, I'm not sure if I am on. There's so many things there in both your talks. It's like right now I'm having a hard time putting my, like there's so many very insightful comments. I too was challenged with pain. I have been challenged with pain lately, and which is sort of something new to me in a way, because I haven't had surgeries and stuff, and I don't remember having issues with that even after surgery, and so now I don't even know for sure what is wrong, but then my conditioning and whatever it is, that I have lived with for a while, of self-healing and self-care and strength and all that, and it was like working with those ideas, and then, but at the same time, it was like, this is like a call for me to embrace the fact that that I don't have total control over what my body and my health and all that, which I think for me it's like I have always felt like there's such thing as, I don't know, that we have this, we have options, and we do the right things. This thing about self-control and given to the fact that you don't really have self-control completely. It's like a play of those things in a dance that also accepting, reality that at some point, you have to, whatever happens is okay, and embracing, some of the things that you might have to embrace that you have no choice. So, and then of course it brings to my mind the idea of, how, we have control of watering the rice seeds, and the universe going around is perfect as it is, sort of also, sort of guiding us, and it's like, which way, do I mean, it's sort of like a dance. I guess I'm looking at it. I've heard people say, well, we don't really have, the universe is always, it's playing itself, and everything is done for us, because we think we're in control, but the universe really, is in control. And anyway, I guess I'm repeating myself. Anyway, I also liked the idea of the fire training, and instead of once you have you're the right place, the fire coming in and either expanding what you have or and not extinguishing. That helps a lot. I don't know. I think what else I was going to say. So I guess I'll stop there. Thank you so much for both your talks.
Yeah, thanks, Georgina. I'm glad you brought up those points there. It brings me back to the issue of like control and not being in control and things happening on their own. Brings me back to that metaphor of the current in the ocean. The current in the ocean. When we look at the ocean and then we experience a current, like I've been in riptides that are pretty powerful, and they take you way out to sea, so I'm glad I'm a good swimmer at that point. But it's like the power of the current doesn't come from the current, it comes from the ocean. The energy that it comes from, when they talk about the Big Bang didn't cause the universe. What power was already there, what energy was already there that created this great explosion of energy kind of thing. So it's almost like that which is not perceivable or describable can be the ocean, or can be our essential being, or nirvana, or enlightenment, or Buddha. But that's what's really motivating us. In one way that one teacher explained it, saying that it's all grace, it all comes from Buddha or God, but sometimes takes the form, that energy, that spirit, and that great compassion takes the form of personal effort. So we experience it. It doesn't mean that we stop experiencing that we're doing things. We experience it as our own personal effort, but gradually we realize that even our own personal effort is a gift, that our whole life is a gift from the Buddha, or from life itself, whatever. Gradually we realize that, and then we know, then there's more of an intuitive sense of what we can do personally, which is basically not, ultimately that's nothing, but we're in harmony, our own personal efforts in harmony with the greater spirit are those positive seeds. Those are the positive seeds in us. And if we're not motivated by trying to protect ourselves, if we realize we're not alone, as Reb said, that we practice with all beings together, then our actions are motivated and informed by that realization, by that understanding of the deep intimacy we have with all beings. And that's what saves us from suffering. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
I was just going to say, it strikes me that diligence and vigilance sort of can work against one another. I was thinking about that while you all were talking. So I've been thinking a lot about this idea of wise hope. And so, of course, wise hope is not about a particular outcome. It's acknowledging that we're not in control. It's about sort of maybe a sense of surrender and a deep feeling that things will be okay, even if we don't know what will happen, or that there will be like some, at least for me, there'll be some kernel of love or understanding that will underpin everything, even if we have no control over the outcome. But I notice in my own life that vigilance is one of the main enemies of that, and that waiting for the other shoe to drop, which I'm sure we've all been there before. I know I'm that way with my son a lot because of his health issues. Like I'm always like just like got like some alert system up here, and it's keeping me sometimes from being able to be in the now or to be able to have that wise hope. And another thing that might be helpful maybe to hear from you all about, or anyone in the room about, is I find it very difficult to water the seeds, the good seeds, without like pushing away the bad seeds. I guess maybe because we're raised in such a Judeo-Christian culture, or I was in a lot of ways, it was like, this is good and this is bad. And like, it's taken me a long time to understand that I'm going to have to sit with my most difficult emotions to be able to sort of integrate them, and not like move past them per se, but to like, I guess like to integrate and to acknowledge, like you're saying, that they're just different forms. They're the deep currents, but I'm the ocean. But what are the most effective ways that people here find that they can really, really, really sit with the very most difficult emotions, but also water their good seeds at the same time?
I love that term, wise hope. I've never heard it before.
Tara Brach, she
Wise
or at least
hope.
I'm sure I found it from somewhere else, but Tara
Yeah.
Brach mentions that a lot.
Okay, yeah, I listen to her sometimes on a podcast. Wise hope. That's beautiful, because it means that you're not forcing any outcome. So I like the ocean analogy. Fire I like better, but even better than that, I like the idea of flowering, and the thing that Philip said before he died, let's allow this thing to unfold in beauty. So, and I always think of a flower, and Thai often use flowers as metaphors. I think of everything that's unfolding, and I can embrace it all. When say the seed of hopelessness comes up in me, I can give it a hug and send it back down to my store consciousness by not feeding it. So, it's what we feed, that it's whatever seeds we water, those are the fruits that we get. And if they're negative, this is difficult. So, but that doesn't mean that we push them away. So everything is a huge embrace. Everything is burning. Everything is a fire.
Yeah, and another side of that, partly what it goes into what I was saying before, but also, because the notion of being the doer, like in the spirit of your question, Kat, is like, how do I do this and do this at the same time? And it's like, offer the notion that you're the doer to the Buddha, and let the Buddha do it, and just receive it, and then your actions will be in harmony with, like Jesus said, not my will, but your will, Lord, kind of thing. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do the balancing and the integrating and all that. It happens if we surrender and trust and offer, and stay open. Stay open to the negative as well as the positive.
Yeah, I think if you're a doer, doing is just another form of control, and it's very hard when to sometimes recognize if you're just in the spirit of doing all the time.
If it's self-conscious and protective, defensive doing, then it is harmful. Yes. Yeah. But we all have some of that, so we have to be kind and gracious to that also, and then offer that off. Yeah. Don't have to get rid of it.
Dear ones, it is 9:30, so I want to give anybody who wants to say something a chance right now before we close.
Alma bowing in. Well, that time went quick.
I know.
So I had a family crisis this week. My daughter had hip replacement surgery on Tuesday. and she was doing fine. And then I spoke to her on Wednesday. She came home Tuesday night, and then all of a sudden I got a text from my other daughter that Tom was on the way to the hospital with her, and she was going to be sharing. Her sister was going to be close by when we go to the hospital, and of course, immediately I know. I just went that. I just really went crazy for a moment, And do I jump in my car? What do I do? And I caught myself, and I talked to myself. I said, just calm down. First of all, just be calm. And I'm about a half hour from the hospital, and I said, just wait. Just wait. She's in good hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to keep talking to myself. And I know that the practice certainly helped. That was for sure.
Yeah.
And I was getting texts back and forth, and she had gotten to the hospital, and it seemed that she was dehydrated, and there's a syndrome after major surgery that can happen. And what I started to do was clean. I started to straighten things up in my, I just took a Swiffer and started going through my house, and Jim was in the other room, and he was kind of going crazy a little bit. He was like, I just didn't pay attention. I just stayed with myself, and I just kept pushing that thing around the house. Oh my goodness, it took a long time. Being in an emergency room takes a long time.
Yeah.
And then she was fine, and she went home. And I saw her the next day, and she was fine. They just fed her a lot of fluids, is what they did. They gave her intravenous, and she kept saying, I'm fine. She didn't even want to go to the hospital. And unfortunately, my son-in-law insisted that she go and called 911. And anyway, that's what happened to me. I felt like that energy, that fire, that Buddha just was with me, and I just let Buddha take over.
Yeah.
If pushing that thing around is working, just keep doing it.
Oh, I so understand cleaning in a crisis. Norma.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the only thing you can control, right?
Right, exactly.
That's a good story. I love you.
Yeah. Great,
Okay.
Norma. You were the best mother you could be.
Okay, then. Do you have your bell today, Norma? Thank you, Kat. Norma, do you have your bell? Good, okay.
Hope it works. I'm in my studio, so we'll see. May the merit of this practice benefit all beings and bring peace.
Together. Thank you so much, my darlings.
Thank you all. The bell's really loud now.
It was
No
wonderful.
problem.
That was great. Yeah.
And it's like we have two Normas. There's the transcendent Norma, the ocean of Norma, and then there's the embodied Norma, and all in one.
The one in the ultimate dimension.
Right, right.
The one in the physical.
Have a great week.
All right, sweethearts.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Have a beautiful day.
Bye.